Okay, so I'm actually the last talk for tonight. Surprise. Yeah, so wait. So this speaking arrangement was actually a last minute thing, so I have no slides, so bear with me. My topic for tonight will be about GraphQL. So for those of you who don't know, please show the laptop. Can you show the okay na? Okay. All right. So for those of you who don't know, GraphQL is another approach to handling APIs. So previously, like in the past, there is SOAP, so XML, and then after a while, REST came along, so JSON. So it like the transition between SOAP to REST was like it took a long while, but like I think nowadays, like I think most of the APIs that you'll see these days will be running on REST. So GraphQL, it's another approach to interacting with APIs. This was made by Facebook. It was like I think this GraphQL originated from their need to handle their timeline for the mobile app. So one of the advantages of GraphQL is that you can create whatever you want. Like you can query for the specific data that you want, and then you'll be able to get that like exactly what you're asking for. So wait. Okay, I'm zooming in. So this is a sample of that. So you have a hero object, and then you'll query for its name. You'll also see like its friends and stuff. So like you can form your query however you want to. So like compared to REST, like if you want to do something like this in REST, you'd have to make multiple API calls. So for example, you would have to call the hero endpoint, and then if you want to get their friends, you would have to do another API call for their friends, and then do another API call for their home world, and then their species. So like in GraphQL, you can just type like the whole string, the whole query that you want to, and then you'll get that immediately. So this is like this is a demo of that. Okay, so this is a demo site for GraphQL. So as you can see here, the sample request here is users, and then we'll get the ID, the username, email, age, and then the threads that's associated with those users. So I'll do the sample request now. So it returned this data set. So now, if you look at the response here, you'll see that it returned the specific fields that we were asking for in the exact order that we mentioned here. So ID, username, email, age, threads. So yeah, like as I said earlier, the advantage here is that you'd only need to do one query for and then you'd get everything you need. So yeah, so next is how do we do this in Ruby? Like so the good thing is there's actually a very mature gem for Ruby called GraphQL Ruby. So yeah, someone made this, and yeah. So I'll show you how to actually use this thing. So yes, first of all, you do gem install GraphQL, and then Rails generate. So this is a web app that I did 5 months ago. So I'll just show it here. So first of all, you'd have to create like a GraphQL folder here, and then yeah. So my GraphQL folder looks like this. it has these folders and then these objects. So the first thing that we'll have to write here, if we want to support GraphQL, is this the budget schema. Well, just the schema rather. So the schema is what defines your data set, like your API. So this this contains everything that that your API will provide to the API clients. So for this, we just called a mutation object here and then a query object. And then if we go back here, you'll see these two. So these are the actual files that we called here. So let's start with query type. So if you look at query type here, wait, let me zoom in again. Okay, there. So we made like two queries here. So we supported a query here called accounts and then account. So accounts, just if you want to get like a list of accounts, and then just account without the S if you want to get like a singular object. And then if you look here, the second argument here would be function, and then you'll have to pass in the function that in GraphQL we usually call this as resolver. So yeah, we give GraphQL the method that will resolve whatever query this is. So we'll look at queries list accounts. So we'll go back here, and then I think we have queries folder here. There, list accounts. And then this is it. So I put a documentation here. So this is what it looks like if you query it from your GraphQL client. And then, yeah, so this is the actual class that'll resolve this query. So it'll, this description part is for the documentation. I'll show it later. And then, yeah, you just define what type it is. So, yeah, so we defined this account type earlier, an object. We'll get to this later, but this is the important part. So whenever you, by default, it calls the method call. And then whatever this returns, it returns to the API client. So it just goes to account at all. It returns all the accounts, and then it actually gets resolved into these objects. So wait, let's go to there. There. So if you remember earlier, we called account type, and then this is where we define the actual object. So like first of all, we assign a name, we assign a description for the documentation, then the following fields that we'll accept for it. So one of the good things about GraphQL is that it's not limited to just one platform. It's actually like a standard. It's universal. So there are like multiple libraries for almost every language right now. So like there's one in Elixir, there's one in PHP. So like the advantage of this is that it's easier to interact with APIs compared to REST. So for REST example, like different companies with their APIs, like they have different ways of interacting with their APIs. Although that's being resolved like lately with all the API standards that have been popping up recently, like Swagger or JSON API. But yeah, like the good thing about GraphQL is that you don't need to care about those standards. You just need to go to their like GraphQL Explorer, and then it'll show you the like whatever it offers. So wait, we'll go to a demo page for GraphQL. Sorry, I'm just doing this on the fly. Okay, I think, yeah, they have this. And then I think there's a like a Heroku app. Okay, so what we're looking at right now is called GraphQL. It's a GraphQL Explorer. It's basically a sandbox that you can use to interact with the API. So if you look at the right part here, there's a button there called Docs. So if we click that, it'll show like whatever the API offers. So like if we search here, I think this is based on the demo on the GraphQL website. So like we have a hero there, and then you can see here that it defines the type, what type of object it is, and then the arguments that you can pass in it. So let's click on the character type, and then there, like it already tells you what fields it has. So like when you write the query later, like you'll know what you can get out of a hero. Like there's also a description here: sentient actor in Star Wars. So yeah, I think the great thing here is that like if the API, that like the maintainer of the API just writes the descriptions properly, it automatically appears here. So yeah. So what are some disadvantages of this? First of all, like the fact that you would only need one call, like it's actually kind of heavy for the server. So like in other REST APIs, in most REST APIs rather, like the way they're doing the way they're managing API requests from multiple clients is by implementing a rate limit system. So like for every client, like you can do like 10 API calls per second. So like they usually do it that way. But for GraphQL, like it doesn't work that way, because if like as I said before, like a GraphQL query can call multiple resources. So like what if you can call like one, like what if you apply that same restraint to a constraint rather to GraphQL. So like if you limit 10 queries per second for GraphQL, and then the API user, like he does, like they do a lot of queries in just a single query, like it'll destroy your system. So like I think for GitHub, they're one of the early adopters for GraphQL. The way they do it is that they implement like a power system. So like for every resource that you add to your query, it gets it has like an equivalent power, and then your rate limit is based on your power on a specific time. So yeah, like that's one of the disadvantages, and one of the things that you have to look out for when you're creating a GraphQL API. And then another downside to this is that it's the fact that it's pretty new. Like for example, like if you want to, like the project that I showed you here, I actually stopped doing it because like it was actually hard to implement this on the client side. Although like I hear that it's been getting better recently. So on the client side, on JavaScript, there are like two libraries. There's Relay, and then there's Apollo. So Apollo is like, I think that's the most popular one right now. But like in the past, like there's a lot of documentation issues with both libraries. So it was pretty hard to implement. Like around last year when I tried doing it. So yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah, do you guys have any questions? Yes. Okay, so the question is it possible to do file upload? Yes, it is possible. like most of the things that you can do in a REST API, you can usually do in GraphQL as well. Like I think they implemented that recently, especially PubSub. Like if you want to implement WebSockets, like I think like around late last year, they implemented WebSockets, and I think they named it as subscriptions. So yeah. Okay. Other questions? No. Okay. That's it. So once again, thank you, Split Media Labs, for hosting this event. Yeah, and thank you all for coming here. I know, like, this isn't the usual place where Ruby, this isn't where we usually host the Ruby meetups in Quezon City. Like, it's usually around BGC, Makati. But so yeah, I appreciate you all coming out here, and next month we'll, I'm not sure, but we'll have the RubyConf next month. So yeah, see you there. Right, thank you everyone. Good night.